then Bitcoin 10x's from here. Like, we don't really have to conclude anything else. And so if you believe in if you understand Bitcoin and you're a technocrat, what you say is Bitcoin is the world's dominant digital monetary network. That's what Cathie Wood just said on CNBC just today. Hey, it's the world's greatest global monetary network and the first, and it's going to go to 600,000 to $1 million a coin. That's our base case. And on that basis, it should go up by a factor of 100.
If you like this video that I'm reacting to, and if you like my reaction to this video, then you're certainly going to love Prague 2024. This speech that you're watching is from Prague 2023, an in-person event. This is one of the largest Bitcoin conferences in all of Europe and one of the best ones in the world, one of the best rated ones in the world. Prague 2024 is going to be awesome, and it's coming up really, really fast. It's coming up in mid-June 2024, June 13th to 15th, I believe. You can find a link to it in the description below. You can meet people like me, like Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, Adam Back, and many, many other speakers. In fact, they have over 100 extremely high-quality, high-signal speakers at this event. So I know it's getting down to the wire. I know it's getting last minute. But all I have to say is that if there's a time to be spontaneous and go to a Bitcoin conference, this is a really good one to keep in mind. And yes, the flights out there may be a little expensive for you, but once you're there, you're in the beautiful Czech Republic, a beautiful place in the world, a place with very affordable living standards, with a beautiful vacation thrown in there, and you're still getting in at the very tail end of this bear market, the very beginnings of this bull market. And so it's probably going to be a very, very exciting vibe there, but also without all the noise of a parabolic market top too. So it's a really good time in the Bitcoin market cycle to go to a conference. Bitcoin Prague 2024 is probably going to be a very good one. And if it's anything like last year, and it's probably going to be much better than last year, it's going to be a really good experience and a lifelong memory. So the link in the description below is going to take you to their website where you can purchase a ticket. And if you use my code, you can get a very, very healthy discount on that ticket, thus making it even more reasonable for you to go. So hopefully you're enjoying this video. And if you're enjoying it, you should really consider going. If you do, it would be a real privilege to meet you and see you there. So click the link in the description below, check it out, and make sure you go. If not this year, go next year. But you might as well go this year because the future is never guaranteed. So thanks. Let's get back to the video.
You know, I discovered Bitcoin starting around March, April of 2020, and that's because the world came to a grinding halt. Interest rates went to zero. The lockdown shut down the economy everywhere in the world. The planes stopped flying, the ships stopped moving, the cars stopped driving. And I looked at the interest rates at zero, and I thought, this is kind of the same as trying to stop the passage of time. And for about 18 months, the entire economy was kind of frozen and stuck. And then around about a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, the Federal Reserve started raising the short-term interest rates, and they went from 0 to 25 to 50 to 75 to 100, and they went straight up to 500 basis points. And that's the fastest rate of increase in the interest rate in our lifetimes, in our business career. And so I like to think of it as, it's like in Top Gun 2, the movie, where the interest rates were about 250 basis points in the middle of 2018, and then the Fed's flying the plane, and it gets about 180 basis points in about February of 2020, and then it steep dives down to zero, and it buzzes the valley. This is flying the world's economy at zero for about 18 months. And then someone decided that they could go into a 9G lift, and they just started pulling back on the wings of the plane, and they're flying as hard as they can up to 500 basis points. And that's the point at which you either black out or you rip the wings off the airplane, right? And in the movie Top Gun, the pilot started to black out. But we've got the point where the plane is almost about to stall, the plane being the worldwide economy. A lot of people are blacking out. You saw this in the UK about 6 months ago, where the Prime Minister and the head of the Minister of the Exchequer lost their jobs in a matter of weeks because they almost blew up the entire insurance, pension fund, and banking business in the UK. A few months after that, we started ripping the wings off of the banking system in the U.S., and we saw the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and Silvergate Bank and Signature Bank and First Republic Bank. And so where we are right now is we're getting to the end of that incredible adjustment where the bankers are trying to reverse the excesses of taking interest to zero. And the result is we know we can't keep raising interest rates much faster, much longer, because we'll just crash the entire U.S. and Western European banking complex. I mean, all the banks are technically insolvent when they raise interest rates that fast because they crash the bonds. So the Western bankers have slowed down that process. Now they're ambivalent. Can they move forward a little bit? Do they have to back off a bit? What's happened in the meantime that people don't notice is when we cranked the interest rates up so fast, we destroyed the value of all the sovereign debt and all the long mid-sized debt in the world. What we're also doing is we're sucking all of the energy out of the developing world currencies. So indirectly, or maybe directly, the interest rate saga has crushed the currencies of Turkey and the currencies of Argentina and the currencies of every developing nation that doesn't have an extremely strong economy. They're all collapsing right now.
Hi, Luke Broyles here, reacting to this video of Michael Saylor and Eric Weiss in Prague 2023. A very excellent speech I've heard. I've actually not watched this yet, but I'm going to be giving my reactions to this video today here. So yeah, Michael Saylor had some wonderful points, getting this discussion off to a very good start here about what he was seeing in March of 2020. Now, a lot of people watching this probably remember what happened in March of 2020. We had the pandemic spread across the world, and we have, as Michael Saylor described, interest rates collapse. The Federal Reserve, the essentially controlled entity, destroyed rates. They forced rates down as close to zero as humanly possible. Now, there are many other things that also happened in the financial world during that time, right? Obviously, we had a massive amount of stimulus, a massive amount of money printing, a massive amount of helicopter money. And addition into that also, we had the reserves for banks go down to literal 0%, right? So not only did the interest rates on money go down to zero, but also the amount of money that was required as backing for other units of money in bank accounts went down to zero, right? Reserve requirements in March of 2020 went down to literally 0%. So I'm recording this now in May of 2024. So now over 4 years, your money in your bank account, technically, legally, may not have any reserves behind it, right? Now, obviously, there's FDIC and there is backing and regulatory nature protecting this, right? But the fundamental problem is that this is not backed one-to-one. You know, the FDIC is nowhere close to being able to preserve it, right? FDIC, you've probably seen that when you got into your bank, right? And so there are many other points that Saylor is touching on here that are really important, but that's one of them. Is the whole metaphor as he described with Top Gun, right? Not all of us are Tom Cruise. Not all of us can weather these wild changes in bonds and interest rates. But from a high level, what's going on here is that as interest rates are forced down, the value of bonds collapses, right? And then vice versa, right? So the bonds are worth something, and then we force interest rates down to stimulate the bond market, right, to preserve everything. But as we force the interest rates from being low to up higher, that means that if I am buying those bonds when the interest rate is lower, but then all of a sudden you're getting a much higher interest rate for the same bond, well, now my bonds are worth a lot less. And this is, as Michael Saylor described, this is why we saw what we saw with Silicon Valley Bank in March of 2023. This is what we're seeing in many other areas around the world, right? As described with the UK, you know, we had a pension crisis. Many other countries around the world are having a problem. And unfortunately, the places with the weakest currencies are having the most problems, right? Argentina, Sri Lanka, Turkey, Lebanon, many other places around the world that don't have the strength of the United States government. They don't have the strength of the United States military to defend its political currency. Those are the places that are suffering the most, right? And this is why we're so passionate about Bitcoin. It's not just number go up, and it's not just a matter of self-preservation against the deterioration of your bonds and savings. It's about having monetary rights for the rest of the world. So I'm really interested to see where Michael takes this, where Michael and Eric take this speech today. Like I said, this is my first time viewing this. I'm really excited. If you have not yet considered joining Prague in 2024, please do it. Time is running out. The link's in the description below. And let's get back to see what Michael has to say next.
So where are we in the macro cycle? We're at the point where the inflation hasn't really gone away. It's backed off of the most extremes, but we still have inflation in excess of the interest rate. We can't really keep raising interest rates without destroying all of our allies' currencies. And we can't raise interest rates without destroying a lot of the Western banks and pension funds and the rest of the bond complex. So the political pressure is going to grow on the banking community to stop raising rates. But of course, they're going to want the inflation to go away. And they're going to want to save all of these other developing nations. So I would expect the logical thing to happen now is all the economists will start to redefine inflation. And so instead of hearing CPI, you're gonna see other inflation measures that we want to focus on. They're going to redefine the measure. They're going to make adjustments to the market basket of goods and services in the inflation metric. So we're going to take out expensive items and put cheap items into the index so that the CPI looks lower. And you're going to start to see new novel financial instruments like swaps, where we're simply going to swap billions or hundreds of billions of dollars for hundreds of billions of dollars of another currency. It'll be an off-balance sheet adjustment. And all of these things will be meant to massage the macroeconomic problem. We'll be trying to support other currencies. We'll be trying to keep our bonds from crashing. We'll be trying to make the inflation look lower. We're going to renormalize. So instead of 2% inflation, maybe it'll be 3% is normal. And instead of 3% of inflation defined 10 years ago, it'll be 3% of the new inflation metric that we just came up with, because this is the proper one, because the world is different today and technology is different. And of course, pretty soon you'll have ad-financed YouTube videos in the CPI, because that's a little bit easier metric to manage. So I think we're at that cycle where the money printing is going to continue. We're going to have more of a delamination between monetary inflation and asset inflation, and producer price inflation and CPI inflation and the general inflation rate. And politicians and bankers are going to struggle to hold it all together with a lot of novel new programs and new ideas.
Those are really good points. Essentially, the long answer short is that we're pretty stuck, right? Now, does that mean that there are tools that the Federal Reserve and the other major central banks of the world could use? Yes, absolutely, right? I don't think Michael Saylor or myself or most other Bitcoiners are claiming that the dollar is going anywhere in the next couple of years, right? The dollar is going nowhere in the next few years. However, even though the dollar is not going anywhere, and even though we will find more tools to preserve the currency in the bond markets, the reality is that we are still stuck. Like Saylor describes, if we raise interest rates more, we cause a great amount of pain. If we lower interest rates more, we cause a great amount of pain, right? And this is the fundamental problem, is that we're between a rock and a hard place, right? The math inherently doesn't add up. And so there is no silver bullet solution at which we can improve things and have things be more grounded in logic, more grounded in truth, and more stable. The only way forward is more distortion. Now, the choice is, which way are they going to have the distortion fall, right? Now, the S&P 500 is rising right now. The stocks are rising, right? The stock market is rising right now on the news of the Federal Reserve announcing that jobs reports are looking weak, right? And so, see, this kind of disparity is why people outside of Bitcoin have all this kind of confusion, right? Why are stocks going up when the economy looks bad, right? It's because everything, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? Everything's a trade-off. If we raise interest rates over here and save this part of the financial system, we're going to cause pain over in this other part of the financial system, right? And so the global picture, right? Most of us are Americans, or in the West somehow, maybe Europe or Canada. Most of us are looking at the American financial system, but that's only 5% of the world's population. If we look in totality at the global world population, essentially what we're seeing is like this kind of same idea on the global stage. We are trying everything we can to preserve America's financial system at the expense of the rest of the world's financial system, right? So in the same way that we print stimulus checks in March of 2020 to save certain people, or PPP loans to save certain businesses, but then causing harm on everyone in the form of purchasing power, right? There's a trade-off there. That's what we're doing with the world on a larger scale too, right? We're doing everything we can to preserve the dollar because all of our financial systems are based on top of the dollar, but the rest of the world is being defunded in that space. So in the same kind of metaphorical way at which you save, you bail out one airline and then another airline is inherently not benefited, right? Inherently has a disadvantage because it doesn't have that government subsidy. It's that same kind of idea, right? And going forward, I think this disparity just continues, right? There'll be an increasing disparity between those that are saving in dollars and those that are saving in any other political currency. There is no second best political currency other than the dollar. That's just a fact. And likewise, I think disparity between dollar holders and Bitcoin holders will continue to skyrocket, right? Again, this video is from Prague in 2023. Since the time that this video has been posted, Bitcoin is up over 120%. That's something to keep in mind. Okay, and by the time you're watching this video, Bitcoin may be up higher, right? When this video came out, Bitcoin was $30,000. Now it's $63,000, $64,000 or so. Okay, I don't know what Bitcoin price is when you're watching it, but the message is timeless, right? Because this is just going to continue. It's going to continue when it's $600,000. This is going to continue when Bitcoin's $6 million or $60 million. So let's see where Eric's next question takes us.
Okay, I think that's a great backdrop for the next topic I want to talk about. Everywhere we've gone for the last week, everybody has wanted to ask about your views on what's happening on the regulatory front. The SEC has come out quite strong against a number of large crypto players. And so I thought it would be helpful to chat a little bit about what your views are on how this impacts Bitcoin, both in the short term as well as the long term.
Yeah, well, Bitcoin's a rabbit hole, and when you start going down the rabbit hole, first you have to learn all about Bitcoin, and then you have to learn all about the block size wars, and then you have to learn about the history of the crypto industry. And somewhere along the way, I started studying Gary Gensler. I took his class at MIT. I went back and I watched every minute of 20 lectures at MIT. And then I started reading everything written by anybody. And as you know, I read all the lawsuits. I read the CFTC lawsuit. I read the Bittrex lawsuit. I read the Coinbase lawsuit, the Binance lawsuits, all of the legal judgments. And I listen to all the congressional testimony, like every minute, like everything that every congressperson or every senator has said about Bitcoin for the past 3 years.
This is true.
And then I talk to you about it. Okay, and so here's my opinion. Right? First of all, in the beginning, there was Bitcoin, and it was good. And there was a unit of account, and it was called BTC. And there was a network that could not be censored, and it was called Bitcoin. And then along came smart people that learned about Bitcoin, and they arrived to fix Bitcoin. I just heard about Bitcoin. I'm here to fix Bitcoin. And they divided into two factions. There are the people that heard about Bitcoin and wanted to help Bitcoin the hard way. And they worked on Lightning, and it took years from 2015, and they're still working on it 6, 7, 8 years later. And they worked on Bitcoin applications, and they worked on Bitcoin companies, and they worked very hard to raise millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars to buy Bitcoin. That's the hard way. And those people are in this room, and they're in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and that's Bitcoin and Lightning and Bitcoin maximalists and people that believe Bitcoin. It's the Samson Mows and the Adam Backs and it's the Elizabeth Starks and the Jack Mahlers and the Jack Dorseys, and you know who they are. And it's hard work. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of bleeding. Then there's another group of people that heard about Bitcoin and they wanted to fix it. And they took the easy way. And the easy way is a few shortcuts. It was, I want to make money by copying Bitcoin. I want to compete with Bitcoin with a new token. I want to bank Bitcoin. I want to rehypothecate Bitcoin. I want to loan you money on Bitcoin. I want to generate yield on Bitcoin. I want to run a Bitcoin exchange. I want to offer you Bitcoin derivatives, and I want to create every other flavor of Bitcoin. And I got the new Bitcoin, the quantum-resistant Bitcoin, and the energy-efficient Bitcoin, and the faster, more beautiful Bitcoin with the crypto kitties on it. Okay, that's the other set, okay? That's crypto. Now, what's going on right now is that and I wanted to create the US dollar on a crypto rail, and I'm going to give you Bitcoin without volatility. And I'm going to give you a network, a crypto network that clears in 1 second, which is cheap and free. So what you see with the regulation right now is the regulators are saying, we're not comfortable with the stable coin. We're not comfortable with the crypto exchange. We're not comfortable with the crypto token. We're not comfortable with the shortcuts. We don't want you to do an ICO. We don't want a corporate coin. And the result of all of that is the crypto ecosystem, which in the beginning was Bitcoin, and then bifurcated into all these other things, is going to come back together and unify on Bitcoin again. And what we're going to see is that instead of the unit account being the dollar, and instead of the network being a crypto exchange offshore, now the unit of account is going to be BTC. And the crypto network is going to be Bitcoin. And if you want a fast Bitcoin network, a fast payment network, it's not going to be a crypto exchange. It's not going to be a proof of stake token. It's going to be Lightning. And the gas is going to be Satoshis. And everything is going to anchor into Bitcoin. So this is a very painful time period for the crypto industry. And you can read it on the news. But it's a very expensive, painful, difficult, educational episode where people that believed in Bitcoin, but then went off to do all of their other altcoin experiments and crypto experiments, they're going to realize that there was a reason that you might want a censorship-resistant network that spit out a block every 10 minutes. They're going to realize that there's a reason for a mining network that spits out 400 exahash of digital power. They're going to realize that there's a benefit to working really long and hard for many, many years to do a Lightning-type network. They're going to realize that these things they took for granted, they thought, we can just have our cake and eat it too. We can have a decentralized network that has the dollar as the unit of account. We can move the money at the speed of light for free. And we don't really need to use energy and mining ASICs and Bitcoin. And we don't have to pay for Bitcoin for gas. We'll just issue our own yo-yo coin and we'll use that for gas. And I think that those people are going to realize that Bitcoin is the safe haven asset. Bitcoin is the risk-off asset. Bitcoin is the censorship-resistant network, right? Bitcoin is the reserve asset of the ecosystem. And that means that as they lose confidence in their tokens, they're going to trade their tokens back into the reserve asset of the ecosystem, which is Bitcoin. When they lose confidence in an offshore or an onshore crypto exchange, they're going to trade back into Bitcoin. When they lose confidence, when they think that, well, that's not censorship resistant anymore, right? Those are all nation state captured networks. They're going to go back to Bitcoin. And so I actually think that this is reminding everybody why Satoshi did what Satoshi did. It's going to bring everybody back to their roots. And as people lose confidence in all of these other crypto ideas, which were meant to make Bitcoin better or fix Bitcoin, right? And I'll give people a benefit of the doubt. They're trying to fix Bitcoin, but they're taking shortcuts. Or maybe it was their business, right? I'm going to be in the business of trading Bitcoin, rehypothecating Bitcoin, hedging Bitcoin, creating competitors to Bitcoin, improving Bitcoin. That was their business. I think that they're going to realize that, in fact, the best idea always was to buy and hold Bitcoin, take the long view, and if you see an issue, if you see something that is suboptimal, like I want to pay for a cup of coffee in a split second for free, if you can't do that with Bitcoin, you don't reinvent the ecosystem, you go back and you focus on creating either a layer 2 or a layer 3 solution on top of Bitcoin, and you solve the problem via Lightning or solve the problem by a custodial Bitcoin wallet. And so ultimately, the capital in the crypto ecosystem is going to migrate from the other crypto assets to Bitcoin. As people lose confidence, as they get fearful about all these other crypto assets and crypto exchanges, they're going to go to the thing they know, the thing they trust. And the truth of the matter is, as Eric, as you've told me many times, the crypto people don't dislike Bitcoin. They actually like Bitcoin. They just thought that there might be another way and there might be another possibility. And now they realize that Bitcoin is the way. And
there's no second best.
There is no second best. The exchanges will simplify. They will go from trading hundreds of tokens or thousands of tokens or tens of thousands of ideas, and they will simplify and they will consolidate. The ones that are going to last are going to focus on Bitcoin, right? They're going to realize that. The investors are going to realize they should focus on Bitcoin. The technologists, whatever their ideas, fast payments, DeFi, some token, any kind of security thing, they're going to focus on Bitcoin. They're going to focus on Bitcoin, Lightning. There'll be an explosion of interest in protocols. The VC are going to move over from crypto tokens, with Solana named as a security, with Cardano named as a security, with all these other 15, 20, 30 tokens named as securities. The VC in Silicon Valley are going to say, wow, what was that thing about Bitcoin? And what was that Lightning? You mean I can do this on Bitcoin with Satoshis? And you're going to see the VCs move over to Bitcoin and Lightning. You're going to see a renaissance of development on Bitcoin. You're going to see an acceleration of Lightning. You're going to see an expansion. And all of this is, in essence, a massive educational campaign to teach politicians the difference between Bitcoin and an ethical commodity and a security. And you can see it. It's like the senator says Bitcoin, the governor says Bitcoin, the congressperson says Bitcoin, the regulator says Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. And all of these lawsuits, and I've read thousands and thousands of pages. There's one word conspicuously missing from all of the thousands of pages. And that one word is Bitcoin. Okay?
Thousands of pages missing. The one word is Bitcoin. That's pretty good. Yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. Well, he started that rant about Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is different than everything else. He started that rant with a very obvious reference to the Bible, right? In the Bible it says, "In the beginning, everything was good," right? Michael Saylor is joking, obviously, to that. I don't think Michael Saylor is a Christian, but I do think he sees the metaphor there, right? He sees the clear metaphor that before original sin, right, everything is perfect, right? In the book of Genesis, right, everything is perfect before man enters the scene and man, causes sin, right? The same kind of idea is pretty much what Michael's touching on here, and I really respect him for having his money where his mouth is, and believing that, right? Because what is the larger point that Michael's talking about here is that the innovation with Bitcoin is not cheaper, faster, better, right? People are scared away of Bitcoin because they say, oh, it's too expensive, or all the transaction fees are too slow, it might take hours, this, that, the other. It's not cheaper, it's not faster, and therefore I don't understand why it's better, right? But the point that Saylor's talking about here, the point he's referencing, in regarding to the book of Eden and the story in Genesis, and the larger point that he goes on to make in the investment case for Bitcoin is that the inherent problem with a global reserve asset is people. That's the real problem he's making. And that's why I like to focus on that in my videos, right? If you focus on Bitcoin, why Bitcoin is better as an investment? If you focus on Bitcoin as a better investment because first and foremost of number go up or purchasing power go up, I think people are not going to get the full picture. If you focus on Bitcoin as, wow, look at how amazing Lightning is and how, we can do instant payments cheaply, I don't think people are going to understand why Bitcoin's better. I think the best way for someone to internalize why Bitcoin is better is when they understand this precise point that Michael's talking about, is that what makes Bitcoin unique is that no human being controls it. No board of human beings can shut it down. No, committee of human beings can change the issuance, right? Not even Michael Saylor himself can do that, right? If Michael were to, try to change Bitcoin, I don't know how he would try. He has said before he doesn't know how to try. And likewise myself, if I knew how to kill Bitcoin, I would do it, right? I can list many ways in which any other token or any security or stock can be destroyed. Michael himself has listed 24 ways in which he could kill his own stock, or which his own stock could have a demise, but which Bitcoin can't, right? And so this is the fundamental difference. Okay, you and I are having this conversation, quote unquote, via the internet right now. We're not having it via a different internet, but back in the early days, we don't realize this. There were many internets. There were many internets back in the late 20th century, the first decade or so of the internet. There were multiple kinds of internet, right? There was a decentralized internet, right? TCP/IP, and there were many centralized internets. And the internet that has survived, the very internet you and I are using today, is the one internet that was not controlled by a certain college or a certain company or a certain group of human beings, right? You can make the moral case for that as saying that human beings are sinful and all humans fall short of the glory of God, and that no human being deserves to be in charge of the world's communication system, right? And likewise, you can make the same argument with Bitcoin. No human deserves to be in charge of the global monetary system. Or you could just go with the strict investment case, financial case, right? What is the price of an airplane in terms of goats or chickens, right? Well, goats are probably a better example than chickens because chickens can actually fly. A machine that can do what the living organism cannot do is inherently worth more than what the living organism can do, right? And so, the same thing I think is true with the internet, right? The form of global digital communication that is outside of human control is worth inherently orders of magnitude, if not infinitely more than the forms of internet that are in control of human beings, right? And I think this is a really big component. I'm not just saying this from a high level view of why Bitcoin's important, because this is about why Bitcoin's important, but it's also about the investment case, right? Everything I just said and everything Michael said in the snippet we just watched is actually really, really bullish. It's actually really optimistic on Bitcoin. And the answer is simple. There's $900 trillion of global wealth, right? But all of this wealth is within a financial system of the goat herder financial system, right? This is the internet that is within the control of human beings, right? Gold is controlled, managed, and backed one-to-one by human beings, right? And I say one-to-one in quotes there, right? Because it's obviously not. Why? Because human beings are in control of it, right? Real estate is backed by people, managed by people, and preserved by people and that wield the guns, right? You pay your property taxes, and the people that hold the guns, control your real estate, right? And they give you property rights until they take it away eventually, but that's the problem with real estate, right? The same thing with stocks and securities. Michael Saylor is the human being in charge of MicroStrategy, the corporate entity, right? Michael Saylor is the dictator, for lack of a better word, of the conglomerate that is MicroStrategy, right? The president is the quote unquote dictator of the American political currency. Every politician is the sole single point of failure for their various political currencies, stocks, or other assets. And my point is that we have hundreds of trillions of dollars of wealth that human beings have accumulated over the course of decades, generations, and centuries. But Bitcoin is potentially a system worth way more than that, right? How do you price the internet in terms of newspapers, right? How do you price centralized systems or conglomerate or arrangement of centralized systems in terms of the decentralized system, right? So not only is everything saying that Michael's saying here true, not only do I think it's true, not only is it important from a first principles case of understanding why Bitcoin is unique, but I also think you begin to realize that Bitcoin is priceless in inferior systems, right? Why would you price inventions from the Iron Age in terms of the Bronze Age? Why would you price things from the internet age into the age before the Industrial Revolution, right? And I think this is what most people begin to realize. They begin to realize first and foremost, oh wait, Bitcoin's different because it's not controlled by human beings, not even Michael Saylor, not even myself, not even Satoshi Nakamoto. And then they begin to understand, oh wow, this is way more bullish than I could have possibly imagined, because not only does that mean that the decentralized system absorbs the wealth of the current financial system, or that's where we talk about $1 million, $10 million, or even $100 million Bitcoin, but you begin to realize that over the course of enough decades or enough generations, this means that this could potentially unlock a whole new level, right? In the same way that iron absorbs all the wealth from the Bronze Age and then adds a whole lot more, or in the same way that the internet absorbs all the newspapers of the past and then adds a whole lot more, Bitcoin very well could be the exact same kind of idea. It's going to absorb global wealth from the last few thousand years in this current era, and then hopefully add a greater amount of wealth in the future. And that should not be surprising. Okay, 80% of the world's adults, 80% of the world's 5.36 billion adults don't have property rights. What happens if Bitcoin can unlock that? I think it's a very, very optimistic catalyst.
So bottom line, right, it's bumpy. It's a turbulent transition. It's a rationalization of the industry. The industry's growing up, but it's long-term good for Bitcoin. And I think you can expect a lot of the crypto bros that got distracted. Maybe they took off their laser eyes. Maybe they loved Bitcoin between 2010 and 2016. I think they're coming back to Bitcoin from 2023 to 2030, and you're going to see there's going to be an avalanche of people returning to the fold, building on top of Bitcoin, and they're going to rediscover the roots of the crypto revolution, right? That the whole idea of cryptography, decentralization, an asset without an issuer, right? And that is what's going on right now. It's going to educate the politicians. It's going to educate the mainstream media. Watch CNBC. They get it. Watch Bloomberg. They get it. Read Wall Street Journal and New York Times. They get it. And so I follow all you guys on Twitter. And I remember when I first got in this space in 2020, people said, when will the mainstream media talk about us? Nobody talks about us. Nobody talks about Bitcoin. Nobody talks about any of this. And then for a while, they talked about a lot of stuff, and it was very confusing, and it was very scary, and it was unclear whether there's a difference between Bitcoin and FTT token. And now they're talking about us, but it's very clear, like Bitcoin is a commodity. This other stuff is uncertain, right? And Andrew Ross Sorkin says, tell me what you think about Bitcoin. And so I think that this has been, it's a catalytic experience. It's cathartic for the crypto community. I think we should welcome them back with open arms when they're ready to return to the fold. But meanwhile, Bitcoin is going to continue to motor forward. We have all of the people rehypothecating and shorting Bitcoin, they're all bankrupt. If you thought it was a good idea to loan your Bitcoin to someone so they could short it, you probably lost your Bitcoin. Everyone in the business of shorting Bitcoin, they're all fallen, right? Everybody that embraced the altcoins as being equal to Bitcoin, they're realizing that was a bad business idea. I think it takes a while for the market to work out these issues, but the law of thermodynamics will not be denied. And Bitcoin is the technically superior asset. It is the economically superior asset. And it is the ethically superior asset, and believe it or not, the vast majority of the disinterested population around the world will eventually, given enough time and information, realize that. And they are realizing that. And that's what's happening in front of your face. It's not pretty. It's not pleasant. But this is the way that Bitcoin rises above the noise and establishes its dominance as the world's greatest crypto asset network.
So, yeah. So we've got a macroeconomic landscape where nation states and central banks are doing their best to destroy the purchasing power of 8 billion people in the world, pushing people into Bitcoin. We've got a regulatory environment that you've just eloquently described as being very good for Bitcoin, certainly in the long term. I think the title of our chat here is The Investment Case for Bitcoin. So let's get a little more granular, talk about that. Take it any direction you like, whether you want to talk about different products or the different investment groups, whether it's individuals, family offices, corporations. What are your thoughts on the investment case for Bitcoin?
Well, I think people are losing confidence in technology investments and in stock and equity investments right now. If you look at the performance of the S&P and the NASDAQ and most conventional companies, they've hit a wall. And so investors in the equity market are scratching their head, and they're increasingly fearful. They've got high interest rates, they've got inflation, they've got regulation, they've got trade barriers. So they're looking around. The commercial real estate market took off in 2020 because interest rates went to zero, and so the cap rates of these companies were extraordinary, and the multiples on commercial real estate were extreme. And there's always like a 3-year lag. Like you and me, we sit around our pool in March of 2020 and we go, oh my, these commercial office buildings are going to be empty. Who's going to want this space? Well, it takes 3 years for people to go, wow, commercial occupancies are low. Who wants the space? So sometimes you don't really want to know 3 years in advance, or at least you got to think about it. But I think investors are getting disenchanted with real estate. They're getting disenchanted with equity. They're getting concerned. I mean, the entire commodity thing is a concern. Commodities don't work, and they're realizing that that's a challenge. So they're also losing confidence, right, in their ownership of these properties, right? You've seen so many people had their assets seized or frozen, and that's continuing. So Bitcoin is emerging, A, as digital gold, B, its proposition is gold is stronger than ever because gold has not performed at all in 2.5 years, and Bitcoin is beating every asset class in the same time period. So the gold hypothesis or thesis is much stronger. Bitcoin as digital property is much stronger. The idea that I could buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin and move it anywhere in the world is becoming appealing to people as they start to struggle with property taxes, and they know there's going to be an increase in tax over time. So Bitcoin has emerged as a digital commodity better than gold, as a digital property better than commercial real estate. It's emerging as an alternative to people that have seen their residential property monetized. And it's also emerging as a world's monetary index, because as the regulators differentiate between Bitcoin and everything else, right? As they hammer over and over and over again, Bitcoin is an asset without an issuer. It is unique. As that happens, right, the significance of Bitcoin being that green ticker in the lower right corner of a CNBC, television episode or newscast, or Bitcoin being at the top of the masthead of the Wall Street Journal every day, right? That's sending a message to the world. This is the world's global monetary index. In fact, this is the greatest of the world's global monetary indexes. And I think Bitcoin has successfully morphed from being speculative, scary, digital asset to legitimate monetary index, legitimate monetary asset everywhere in the world. And, we've talked about this before. I think that if you get people to acknowledge that Bitcoin is an asset with a period, then Bitcoin 10x's from here. Like, we don't really have to conclude anything else. I have my hierarchy of investors. It's like a 5-part hierarchy. Okay, here are Bitcoin investors. There's the Bitcoin denier, like the Peter Schiff. Bitcoin is tulips. It doesn't exist. It's a scam, right? The Bitcoin deniers have actually been discredited, right? They've got no credibility left. When the head of the CFTC, the SEC, the White House, Congress, Senate, the Treasury, the head of the central banks of Europe and the United States, when the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, when CNBC, when they all acknowledge Bitcoin as an asset, the deniers just look silly. So the deniers have kind of been silenced. Now you've got the skeptics. Skeptics are those that say, oh, Bitcoin, it's an asset. It may be digital gold. It's too good to be true. So the government will ban it. Like, follow me that again. It's really good. It's so good that the government's going to ban it. That's the skeptic, right? They're not denying. They're just saying, well, someone's going to take it away from you. Okay, well, that was a very loud refrain 3 years ago. And you heard that from bankers and from big investors. You've even heard it 2 years ago and 1 year ago. But if you're reading the 10,000 pages of lawsuits right now, and if you're looking what's going on in Congress and the Senate, it's pretty obvious they're not taking it away from you guys, right? At the end of the day, the one thing that the regulators everywhere in the world are trying to tell you is if you operate a crypto exchange, you can sell and buy Bitcoin. That's what they're trying to tell you. Bitcoin is good. It's ethical. It's an asset without an issuer. It's real. It's an innovation. We don't know what we think of it, but it is tangible. So the skeptics are actually proven wrong as well. And now we move to the last three categories. The investor, the technocrat, and the maximalist. Investors are people that say, Bitcoin's a digital asset. I think maybe I'll buy some, maybe I'll short it. It's correlated to the NASDAQ. No, it's uncorrelated to the NASDAQ. No, it's negatively correlated to the NASDAQ. They're like traders, they change their mind, but if they acknowledge that it's something, then they need 1% of it. Okay. We're actually seeing a migration, and a lot of people are coming on board as investors and traders, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I think the regulators and the mainstream media are doing a great job of orange pilling Bitcoin investors, and this is maybe the first and greatest asset class, since the creation of the S&P 500, right? And since the creation of the S&P index or the Vanguard index, right? This is the biggest thing for them. So, yeah, we like investors. The technocrat is what I was with regard to Apple in 2009. If you'd asked me, I said, Apple's going to be a digital monopoly, a mobile monopoly. They're going to crush everybody. They're going to get 1 billion users. They're going to make huge amounts of money. The stock's going to go up by a factor of 10. Okay, if you believe that Microsoft is going to own the business software market and Google is going to own the search market and Apple is going to own the mobile market, then you're a technocrat, a techno investor. And pretty much every obscenely rich person that you know in this world was a technocrat. The Mark Zuckerbergs, the Larry Pages, the Sergey Brins, the Steve Jobs, all of them. The Zuckerbergs, the Jeff Bezos of the world, they're technocrats, right? A lot of people made a lot of money being a technocrat. And so if you believe if you understand Bitcoin and you're a technocrat, what you say is, Bitcoin is the world's dominant digital monetary network. That's what Cathie Wood just said on CNBC just today to Andrew Ross Sorkin. She said, hey, it's the world's greatest global monetary network and it's going to go to $600,000 to $1 million a coin. That's our base case. Technocrat. And then she went on to say, yeah, we like Tesla. We like technology, right? That's okay. Those people are great. Warren Buffett eventually bought Apple Computer. Carl Icahn eventually bought Apple Computer, right? Those people, once they buy, they'll hold. I started out as a technocrat, and I think anybody that understands technology says, well, it's 95% of the proof of work in the world, maybe more. It's absolutely dominant. The next closest thing is 1%. So it doesn't take a stretch to say Bitcoin is the digital monetary network destined to provide a digital monetary network to billions and billions and billions of people in the next 1 to 2 decades. And on that basis, it should go up by a factor of 100. And we're winning those people. We're going to get them. But the last type of investor is the maximalist. Okay, and here's my definition of maximalist. Jack Dorsey said, Bitcoin is an instrument of economic empowerment. I heard those words. They stuck with me my entire life. When I first bought Bitcoin, I said, it's the world's greatest digital gold network. It's going to be better than Apple Computer. But when I heard Jack Dorsey speak, I said, Bitcoin is an instrument of empowerment for 8 billion people. It's an ethical good. It's a utilitarian entitlement to all 8 billion people in the world. It gives property rights. It gives freedom. It gives a hope of sovereignty. That's a little bit better than the value proposition of Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft, which I like. But at the end of the day, if you believe that Bitcoin is an instrument of empowerment, then you're a maximalist, right? People don't, when I owned Apple stock, I didn't think it was going to cure half of the ills in the world and provide property rights to everybody in China or Africa. I just thought it was a really good investment with a technology lever, so much leverage it was unstoppable. I said it's unstoppable. Like Amazon's unstoppable, like Google's unstoppable, like Bitcoin is unstoppable. However, the difference with Bitcoin is it's not just unstoppable, right? It's inevitable and it's ethical. And so for that reason, I think it's the most important thing I've ever done. And you don't have to be disinvested from everything else in your life. You can own a building, own Apple stock. You can believe in supporting your local mayor. You can actually own farmland in Kansas, and you can actually mine for silver, or you can run a natural gas well, and you can still be a Bitcoin maximalist. Right? What differentiates Bitcoin maximalists is say, this is not just an unstoppable digital network. This is an ethical imperative. And if you believe it's an ethically good thing, then you become as passionate as Jack Dorsey is, as everybody in this room is, right, as I am. And I think that ultimately is what differentiates the decision to support Bitcoin from the decision to support gold or natural gas or oil or any given corporate stock or invest in a building. Those are just mercenary investments, but this is a mission.
This is definitely a mission. And I think that's a big part of why people look at Bitcoin. They say that, oh, they're a bunch of religious Bitcoin fanatics or they're a part of a cult, right? Is because unlike the people advocating for the S&P 500 or for real estate or silver, I don't know, maybe the silver or gold bugs have their own mission, right? But the Bitcoiners also have a mission. I would argue it's a stronger and more compelling mission than the gold and silver bugs, right? They might have the mission of ending the Fed, right? But the Bitcoiners have the mission of not only ending the Fed, but also building the better future for others and having that technology base. So Michael Saylor also touched on a couple points that I think are really important. First of all, the differentiation between Bitcoin as an asset class and all the other asset classes, right? Like the real estate and gold that he talked about. And then also, of course, he talked about Bitcoin going 100x, right? 100x from, at the time he recorded this, $30,000 is $3 million. So I'll get to that in just a moment. But to the first point regarding, actually, why not? I'll go ahead and touch on that. He mentioned Kathy Wood. He mentioned how if people just view Bitcoin as a asset on the ticker or in the green box, how that could 10x Bitcoin. I actually agree with that. Right now, people at the time a year ago when this came out in 2023, people said that was insane. Right? No way Bitcoin's going to 10x. Bitcoin's $30,000. FTX had just collapsed a mere 6 months before this video. This $30,000. This is surely a bull trap, right? This is surely just a dead cat bounce on the way down, right? But of course, Bitcoin's up double, right? So now that 10x is only 5x away, right? That would take us to about $300,000 per Bitcoin, from $60,000 to $300,000. Do I think this happened this cycle, this year, next year? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But really doesn't matter, because the important thing that does matter is that Bitcoin price is a communications mechanism, right? I know a lot of people in Bitcoin say that pricing Bitcoin in terms of dollars is an oxymoron. And to a certain extent, I fully agree, right? Pricing the airplane in terms of slugs is nonsensical, because slugs can't fly and slugs, can't do any of the things that a plane can do, right? And it's like trying to price the internet in terms of ancient stone tablets, right? They're inherently not the same thing. What's the internet worth in terms of tablets? 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, 100 trillion? It's inherently priceless, right? So I understand why pricing Bitcoin in terms of dollars is an oxymoron. However, it is a really important communications mechanism, because even if in the long term it's an oxymoron, it's communicating to the free market that, hey, this is Bitcoin price. This is the way we communicate, right? When people go and watch CNBC every day, when they go and look at the stock market, when they go and look at this, that the market is communicating to them things, right? Like I mentioned before, if you have that trade-off, and if the Federal Reserve comes out and says the job reports is weak, stocks rally, right? Now, most people look at that and they're confused. Why is the economy, quote unquote, rising in value when the jobs report is bad and people are losing jobs? I don't understand. That doesn't make any sense, because people inherently understand that pricing and prices are communications mechanisms, but they don't understand what the stock market's telling them when it rallies on bad news. But see, what people don't understand is that the stock market's not communicating to you what the value of the economy is. It's communicating the value of the economy to you in terms of dollars. And so when the stock market rises, when bad news comes out from the Federal Reserve, it's the market communicating to you that the market believes that the Federal Reserve is about to debase the dollar a bit more, about to inflate the dollar a bit more, about to ease interest rates a bit more. And thus the quote unquote economy, really just a small segment of American corporate paper, that priced in terms of dollars becomes worth more because the dollars are worth less, right? And so Michael Saylor makes a really good point. Yes, even though the dollars you're measuring Bitcoin from within are flawed, it's still an important communication mechanism for the millions and billions of people that don't yet price everything in terms of Bitcoin. So yeah, I fully think that Bitcoin could do a 10x. I do think it could go to 200, 300, 400,000 when people start to realize Bitcoin is an asset and we can move investments in that. Fidelity, for example, Fidelity Investments has 4.9 trillion in assets under management. They recently said, now with the ETF, right? This is something that's happened since Michael Saylor gave this speech, but about 6 months after the speech in January 2024, Fidelity, of course, they got the Bitcoin ETF through. They have 4.9 trillion assets under management, and they are suggesting up to a 3% allocation for their clients. Now, 3% of 4.9 trillion is roughly 145, 148, 150 billion, let's say $150 billion. You know, $150 billion coming into this asset where there's only a million or a million and a half, 1.7 coins on exchanges, that's a significant amount of money. If you have, let's say, $500 billion chasing a remaining, let's say, 800, 900,000 coins, that's like $600,000 or so chasing every single coin remaining on exchanges. So yeah, I fully think it could 10x on the reaction of people understanding this is a asset, and this is an asset that trades against the NASDAQ, against the real estate, and against silver and everything else. And so therefore, maybe a 3% allocation is justified. But the even bigger deal is something he was talking about also that I think perhaps a lot of people miss out on, and this is, I think, really important. Bitcoin does not act like other investments. See, this is something I help people with in my line of work specifically, is that if you own real estate, you own it in one location, right? If you are in the United States and you own a piece of real estate, you own that real estate within the United States, right? If you own gold within Canada, that gold is within the United States. If you own a stock over in the UK, that stock is in the UK, right? If you have an account, a bank account in Japan, in yen, then that's within Japan's jurisdiction, obviously, right? But the difference with Bitcoin, this I think is such a big deal, and this is what Michael Saylor said, that the government's not coming after you. I think a really important critical component of that is that your Bitcoin can be in multiple jurisdictions simultaneously, right? So, for example, a lot of my clients, the people I help, are people in Canada, right? Because Canada, obviously, unfortunately, has had a lot of laws either proposed or passed against citizens, right? Obviously, there was a trucker protest of a couple of years ago. Obviously, now in 2024, there's more laws coming out regarding, quote unquote, hate speech and other things that the government deems offensive, right? And so a lot of people in Canada are concerned. Hey, if I own Bitcoin in Canada, and I don't think the government will come after them, but if they did, could they get the Bitcoin? And they might be able to, right? If you own the Bitcoin ETF, they're surely going to get it. If you own it in an exchange, they're surely going to get it. But even self-custody, you have to make that decision of, do I lie under oath to the government and risk my own self and my family with jail time and lawsuits and all sorts of, things of being an enemy of the state and lying to the state and saying I lost everything in a boating accident? Or do I have a multi-sig Bitcoin vault where keys are in different countries, right? So a lot of my clients reach out and they can have a key in Canada, a key in the United States, and a key in Australia. So that way, if Canada is going to come after them and try to take their Bitcoin, they can't. That person can voluntarily give up their key to the Canadian authorities. They don't have to lie under oath, and they have the rest of their Bitcoin. Well, where are the keys? Oh, one's in the United States. Oh, and the other one's in Australia. You have to go through the American judicial system. You have to go through Australia's, right? And of course, you're not going to do that, right? Of course, the other key agent is going to say client's in a duress, and they're not going to give that, right? So this is something, my point in saying that is that because Bitcoin is a digital asset, because Bitcoin is not analog like real estate or gold, the implications are way more dramatic than any of these other assets, right? This is like I was talking about previously in my previous comment about how we have this ancient world of assets that can only be within one jurisdiction because they are either, number one, analog assets, or number two, digital assets under the control of a political entity that's centralized. Both of those things inherently can only be within one jurisdiction at one time. But if you set up a collateral custody multi-sig Bitcoin vault where you have 3 keys in 3 different countries, it's the first asset you've ever owned in your lifetime, including Bitcoin, where the keys in one instant are within 3 different jurisdictions. And you can move those jurisdictions in a matter of moments, right? You're concerned about the United States coming after you, fine, move your key to Vietnam. If you're concerned about Vietnam coming after you, fine, move it to Singapore, move it to the UK, move it to anywhere else in the world you run, right? So obviously what I'm talking about here is cloud custody multi-sig. We do provide this at the Bitcoin Advisor. There's a link down in the description below. This is why I've been pounding the table on collateral custody multi-sig specifically for a very long period of time now, right? People 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 10 months ago were not understanding why I was doing it. This is one component of why I'm doing that, because that's really important that if, and I'm an optimist at heart, right? But if you were to pass along, if you want to hold your Bitcoin within a Roth IRA or a 401k or a super managed super fund or some pension or some other form of thing, multi-sig is the way to do that, right? And like Michael Saylor is describing, there's no other asset like Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's going to 10x when people understand this is an asset. This is unlike anything else. And because it is not an analog asset and because it's not under a centralized authority, you can do things with it that you cannot do with the other ones, right? So please, do not hold your Bitcoin on exchanges. You miss out on all of those benefits. Do not hold your Bitcoin in a Bitcoin ETF. You miss out on all those benefits. Hold self-custody Bitcoin, just like Michael Saylor advocates for and just like he describes. And if you want the benefit of having a cloud custody multi-sig vault, click the link in the description where you can learn about that and you can actually talk to somebody about what that means for you and how you can do that within a retirement account so that all of that price appreciation for Bitcoin is tax advantage or possibly tax-free for you. But there's one other thing that Michael Saylor described too. He said not only could Bitcoin do 10x, it can do 100x. 100x from the time of recording is $3 million. He mentioned the 10x, but then he mentioned the Cathie Wood types, the technocrat types, and how Bitcoin could do 100x, and how the majority of the world's massively wealthy people are people that are technocrats, right? I think that's a very good point. I think that's very true. And I think a major component of why that's true is because of optionality, right? All the people he listed, right? Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Steve Jobs, as he called them, I don't know why. But all those people, the reason they were so rich is because they were technocrats, right? They owned a share of a technical system that had a Metcalfe law that just ballooned up as it went to 1 billion users. And they had all the optionality, right? Elon Musk may not have a lot of cash in his bank account, but he can sell 1/1,000,000th of his stock and have enough money to live for years, even with a above average American lifestyle, right? Jeff Bezos can sell 1% of his stock and still be a multi-millionaire, right? It's an optionality. And this is something I think people don't understand with Bitcoin. People look at Michael Saylor and say, no way Bitcoin could do 100x. They say, no way Bitcoin could go to $1 million or 10 million or $100 million. But I don't think they understand that the higher Bitcoin goes, the less that people have to sell, right? If you're watching this and you have 2 Bitcoin, and you think you're good because you got 1 Bitcoin on the exchange, you got 1 Bitcoin on your ledger on a single sig phrase, and you're crossing your fingers, nothing goes wrong, right? That's great and that's cute and wonderful. But if that goes to $500,000 to now where you have $1 million in Bitcoin, you get a little nervous, right? You might consider selling some. But if it goes up to 10 times that, right? If it goes to 10 million, well, now you need to sell a lot less to get the same purchasing power of your lifestyle, right? The higher Bitcoin goes, the more it gets close to that 100x. The less people have to sell, right? That is why these technocrats that he's describing get so rich. It's not just because they make more money, it's because they make so much more money than anyone could possibly dream that their optionality is still abundant with minimal sell-off. And if everyone within that network is like that, that means that on total, less and less needs to enter the market to satisfy that demand, right? Hopefully it's making sense. But if everyone in Bitcoin is increasingly gaining purchasing power together simultaneously because Bitcoin's not a zero-sum system, what that means is that the higher Bitcoin goes, the less that people need to sell to live and consume, right? And the more that people enter Bitcoin, the more that optionality gains and the more demand there is for a perpetually smaller number of coins, the higher upside there is, right? This is precisely why as Bitcoin goes up, the upside potential is high, right? It's completely different than any other asset class, right? This is different than real estate. This is different than stocks. This is different than gold. The higher gold price goes, the greater the incentive for a centralizing agent or a centralizing actor to centralize it or confiscate it or whatever, right? But with Bitcoin, the higher it goes in value, the greater the optionality, the greater the incentive for people to join the network, increase that Metcalfe law, increase the number of people desiring optionality, and the less Bitcoin that need to be sold to satisfy consumption demand. It's absolutely mind-blowing, and it's why it's critical to get self-custody of your Bitcoin, to click the link in the description, get self-custody if you've somehow not done it already, and if you have the interest in protecting against that vile upside and protecting against the government taking your Bitcoin, or a lawsuit taking your Bitcoin, or some other jurisdictional issue taking your Bitcoin. It's why collateral custody, multi-sig, and globally jurisdictional arbitrage vault is extremely important, right? So combined a lot in that little rant there, but let's get back, and I'd love to see how Michael finishes off this presentation.
I love that definition of Bitcoin maximalist because it's so inclusive. And I think there's often a perception that Bitcoin maximalism is anything but inclusive. So I think that's great. In addition to that, there's this kind of feeling that there is this strong ideology around Bitcoin, which this role of financial empowerment kind of permeates our industry. And that ideology can be viewed, some people think it's zealotry and has religious connotations to it. Others just think it's an ideology. What are your thoughts on the ideological components of Bitcoin?
I think Bitcoin is definitely an ideology. It's a superior ideology. If you believe in the application of mathematics and physics and the laws of thermodynamics to the world of economics and politics and human behavior, then you believe in Bitcoin. I don't think you have to apologize for that. There was a time when Galileo said, I think that the earth moves around the sun. And I observed that because of science and experimentation. And people thought that was a religious belief, but it was just an ideology grounded in science. And I think that everything that's beautiful in this world, right? The planes that fly, the trains that move, the ships that float, that don't sink, right? The electricity, the fire, these are all based on physics, and they're based on thermodynamics. And if you believe in the cult of fire and the cult of electricity and the cult of sailing power and ships that float and don't sink, then you believe in ideology. But it's an ideology rooted in mathematics and rationale and physics. And I think that the Bitcoin community is passionate, but it's because we want physics and we want mathematics to be applied to money and to be applied to property rights and be applied to politics and be applied to economics. And for the first time in human history, we have the technology to bring physics and mathematics and thermodynamics to economics. And for everyone that doesn't understand that they may view that as an ideology and a bit scary. But the answer to that is we just have to educate the world. Because once they understand that there are physics that we use to fly our airplanes and build our skyscrapers and make our mobile phones work and heat our homes, and those physics can also be used to make our economies work better and make everyone's life better, I think that people will embrace that technology, and then they'll realize that, Bitcoin maximalists are no more religious zealots than Galileo or Isaac Newton were when they proposed certain scientific and mathematical ideas to make the world a better place.
That's a great point. One final quick note is that Eric Weiss, if you don't know who he is, like he mentioned earlier in the discussion, Eric Weiss is one of Michael Saylor's best friends, right? They've said before that they're best friends, right? I think it's really important. You want to orange pill your family, you want to orange pill your loved ones, your coworkers, your son, your nephew, your dad, your grandpa, whomever. You want to orange pill them, be their friend. right? Michael Saylor was not orange pilled by logic. Frankly, Michael Saylor was, disregarding Bitcoin all the way back in 2013. Michael Saylor was orange pilled by Eric Weiss, okay, his friend. If you want to orange pill the people you love, be their friend, first of all, right? Don't come at them from a you gotta buy Bitcoin perspective. Come at them from a I want to be your friend perspective. I want to care about you. I want to love you. I want to see you improve your life. I want to see you improve your relationships, your health. And yes, Bitcoin is a component of that, right? You don't have an addict to smoking. You don't help someone who's a habitual smoker or gambler. You don't help them by only talking about their smoking addiction. You don't help them by only talking about their gambling problem, right? You help them by being their friend, by loving and caring about them. And through that, you will help them understand Bitcoin, right? So if you're trying to orange pill your network, it is the single fastest way to increase your personal Bitcoin stack is to be a friend to the people in your network, right? You're buying Bitcoin as fast as you can. I know it. But it's even better to have your entire family be buying Bitcoin too. Even if it only indirectly benefits you, it will still impact you, right? If you're a kid, the fastest way for you to increase your Bitcoin stack is help your parents understand Bitcoin, love them, care about them, help them not be emotionally fragile when it comes to Bitcoin volatility, and buy Bitcoin, because eventually that Bitcoin is going to be passed on to you. If you're in a business and you have a job in a fiat business, help your business understand Bitcoin, help them adopt Bitcoin, because that's how you help make sure your job is going to be around in the future, right? The single most effective thing you can do to increase your Bitcoin stack, your lump sum Bitcoin buys, or your dollar cost average Bitcoin buys, is to help your family and friends understand Bitcoin. And the best way to help them do that on an emotional level is be their friend, just like Eric Weiss was the friend of Michael Saylor. And then perhaps one of the most practical ways you can help them do that is to help them buy Bitcoin safely and take self-custody, right? I've got lots of resources in the description below, right? I've got free videos in the description below. I've got a little mini step accelerator. If you're brand new to Bitcoin, or you have a family member that's brand new to Bitcoin, where do I buy Bitcoin? How do I do it safely? How do I do self-custody? How do I do a multi-sig vault that's extremely user-friendly, beginner-friendly to me? How do I mine Bitcoin? All of those answers are in the link in the description below, right? So if you appreciate this video, please like, subscribe, comment, share it with your loved ones, all that stuff. But hopefully that message is a good place to end this video, right? Is that in-person relationships are way better than digital relationships. Love and care for the person before you love and care about them being orange-pilled. And please, yes, take your self-custody Bitcoin seriously. Take your multi-sig collateral custody vault via the Bitcoin Advisor seriously. The link's in the description below, because all these things I genuinely think are going to help people. I want to see everyday people. I want to see the average everyday millionaires, the average everyday middle-class people. I want to see the people beginning their Bitcoin journeys. I want to see those people adopt the Bitcoin multi-sig options. I want to see those people adopt the Bitcoin self-custody option. Because in a long time horizon, the people and friends of Michael Saylor are going to get orange pilled, right? He's been on a yacht with Jeff Bezos, right? He's been talking to other billionaires and multi-millionaires, right? He's been talking to those people, and those people are going to demand the multi-sig vaults to have jurisdictional arbitrage. They're going to demand the service-based Bitcoin companies are going to be providing that, right? So please take these things seriously now. Buy Bitcoin, get off zero, understand that the upside is way higher than downside, that as Bitcoin goes higher, the upside possibility only continues to grow. Weather the volatility, love your family and friends, and make sure you're getting your self-custody done properly.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there with we've got to educate the world, and the contribution that you've made through your podcast and your colorful metaphors and explanations of how to educate the world on Bitcoin has been nothing short of extraordinary. So on behalf of everyone, thank you for that. I think we're out of time, but thank you.
If you like this video that I'm reacting to, and if you like my reaction to this video, then you're certainly going to love Prague 2024. This speech that you're watching is from Prague 2023, an in-person event. This is one of the largest Bitcoin conferences in all of Europe, and one of the best ones in the world, one of the best rated ones in the world. Prague 2024 is going to be awesome, and it's coming up really, really fast. It's coming up in mid-June 2024, June 13th to 15th, I believe. You can find a link to it in the description below. You can meet people like me, like Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, Adam Back, and many, many other speakers. In fact, they have over 100 extremely high quality, high signal speakers at this event. So I know it's getting down to the wire. I know it's getting last minute, but all I have to say is that if there's a time to be spontaneous and go to a Bitcoin conference, this is a really good one to keep in mind. And yes, the flights out there may be a little expensive for you, but once you're there, You're in the beautiful Czech Republic, a beautiful place in the world, a place with very affordable living standards, with a beautiful vacation thrown in there, and you're still getting in at the very tail end of this bear market, the very beginnings of this bull market. And so it's probably going to be a very, very exciting vibe there, but also without all the noise of a parabolic market top too. So it's a really good time in the Bitcoin market cycle to go to a conference. Bitcoin Prague 2024 is probably going to be a very good one. And if it's anything like last year, and it's probably going to be much better than last year, it's going to be a really good experience and a lifelong memory. So the link in the description below is going to take you to their website where you can purchase a ticket. And if you use my code, you can get a very, very healthy discount on that ticket, thus making it even more reasonable for you to go. So hopefully you're enjoying this video. And if you're enjoying it, you should really consider going. If you don't, it would be a real privilege to meet you and see you there. So click the link in the description below, check it out, and make sure you go. If not this year, go next year. But you might as well go this year because the future is never guaranteed.